What's going on, Not Move Nation? Welcome to the Not Move podcast. Today is November 7th at 2:47 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot of NBA on today, so I'm going to break those games down just a little bit. I'm not going to go over as many player props as I normally do unless we get some questions in chat. Then I'd be more than happy to look up some NBA player props for you all. But I really came on here to give you guys some injury updates and which teams I'm leaning with tonight. And first off, I just want to say thank you to the supporters, subscribers, and followers. We really appreciate you guys here at the Not Move podcast. Also, a special thank you to BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Walmart.com, Open Goal, and the MLB and NFL Pro Shops. All right, so let's break down these injury updates. I'm using the FanDuel Daily Fantasy app to look at that information, as well as rotowire.com, ROTO wire.com. So I'm going to just start here from the top of the list. Anthony Davis, doubtful, unlikely to play in the game tonight against the Memphis Grizzlies. He is the Dallas Mavericks power forward / center. LaMelo Ball, point guard for the Charlotte Hornets, is doubtful with an ankle issue. And in case I didn't clarify, Anthony Davis is doubtful with a calf issue. Bam Adebayo, out tonight with a toe injury. He is the power forward / center for the Miami Heat. De'Aaron Fox remains out. Doesn't look like he's played at all this season. He has a hamstring issue. For the Sacramento Kings, the point guard, or not the Sacramento Kings, used to play for Sacramento, but with the San Antonio Spurs, De'Aaron Fox, point guard, out with a hamstring issue. Tyler Herro, point guard / shooting guard for the Miami Heat, out tonight, foot / ankle issue. Cam Thomas, shooting guard for the Brooklyn Nets, out with a hamstring issue. George, small forward / power forward for Washington, questionable with an illness tonight. Sexton, point guard / shooting guard for the Charlotte Hornets, is doubtful with a neck issue. Brandon Miller, shooting guard / small forward for the Charlotte Hornets, out tonight. DeAndre Hunter, small forward / power forward for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He is probable to play with an illness tonight. It's rare that I see that a player is probable and they do not play, but it does happen from time to time. We saw Giannis. He was probable last week, and he ended up, about an hour before tip-off, they declared him out. Kobe White, point guard / shooting guard for the Chicago Bulls, out tonight with a calf issue. Coulibaly, small forward / power forward for the Washington Wizards, out with a lower leg issue. Tobias Harris, small forward / power forward, out tonight with an ankle issue. Detroit Pistons. Sokan, power forward for the Spurs, questionable to play tonight with a wrist issue. Dosunmu, shooting guard for the Chicago Bulls, questionable with a quadriceps issue. Zach Edey, center for the Memphis Grizzlies, out. Did it specify ankle? Lively, center for the Dallas Mavericks, out with a knee issue. Harper, point guard / shooting guard for the San Antonio Spurs, out with a calf issue. Steven Adams, questionable to play in this game against the Spurs tonight. He's the center for the Houston Rockets. I believe he's a backup center. I know he is. But Luke Cornett out with an ankle issue tonight. He is the center for the San Antonio Spurs. Lonzo Ball out with a knee issue. He's the point guard for Cleveland. Dean Wade out with an eye issue for Cleveland. He is the small forward / power forward. Olynyk, questionable to play tonight. He is the power forward / center for the San Antonio Spurs. Grant Williams out, power forward for the Charlotte Hornets with a knee issue. Luke Kennard, questionable with an illness. He is the point guard / shooting guard for the Atlanta Hawks. Caris LeVert, questionable to play tonight. He is with the Detroit Pistons, shooting guard / small forward due to left knee soreness. What else here? I mean, there's some other injuries here on not so big of names, but those are the big names. What about Sabonis? Earlier today, I saw Sabonis was questionable. I don't think I mentioned his name here. Oh, I'm in a different. I see. There may have been some other ones that I skipped over. Let me double check this real quick. All right. Sabonis, questionable with ribs issue. He's the power forward / center for the Sacramento Kings. Questionable to play tonight for the Kings. Stephen Curry out for the Golden State Warriors tonight. He is the point guard for the Golden State Warriors. We already said Bam was out. De'Aaron Fox remains out. Jimmy Butler, small forward / power forward for the Golden State Warriors, questionable with a back issue, but I'm seeing that he went through Friday morning shoot around. Typically, when a player does go through shoot around, they have a bigger likelihood of playing in that game. But once again, he is questionable, Jimmy Butler. Jalen Williams, Jalen, small forward / power forward for the Oklahoma City Thunder, out with a wrist issue. Cam Thomas, I'm pretty sure I already mentioned that he's out for Brooklyn with a hamstring issue. Draymond Green, probable to play tonight with a ribs issue. He's the power forward / center for the Golden State Warriors. Aaron Wiggins out for the Oklahoma City Thunder, small forward / power forward with a thigh issue. Any other big time injuries? Dort, shooting guard / small forward for the Oklahoma City Thunder, questionable with a shoulder issue. And there's a few other, few other injuries. Once again, if you want to go check out that rotowire.com fantasy day, the FanDuel Daily Fantasy app, I think both of those sources are quality sources for injury updates. Al Horford also questionable to play tonight with a foot issue, and he is with the Golden State Warriors. And that looks like about it for the most notable injuries. All right, so I'm just going to go through real quick and give my leans for each of these games here. And then which games I feel the most comfortable about. Now, tonight is that NBA group play. You guys know I'm not a big fan of the group play. I remember last season, I had difficulties with it when it comes to predictions. And there was, what was it, on Halloween? So last Friday, I gave out some predictions for that day, and they didn't go well. So if you are tailing, please do so at your own risk, and that really goes for any time that you're tailing. Really, I come on here to just give you guys information, injury updates, statistics, and which side I'm leaning with. So, I mean, last Friday it would have probably been good to fade. So let's see what happens today. Let me pull up the book real quick. I like to use DK whenever I'm looking at the lines. So the Magic are favored by 3.5. They're hosting against Boston Celtics. I like the Boston Celtics plus 3.5. I lean towards Boston plus 3.5. Cleveland at Washington. Cleveland's won 12 games in a row against Washington. I've got to lean towards Cleveland minus 13.5 against Washington. Toronto at Atlanta. I have to lean towards Toronto plus 2.5. Toronto also has won 3 games in a row against Atlanta. Got to lean towards Toronto plus 2.5 there. Detroit at Brooklyn. Detroit's won 3 games in a row against Brooklyn. I don't know about that one. Houston and the San Antonio Spurs. Houston's won 3 games in a row against the Spurs. I like the Spurs plus 4.5 in that one. I'd lean towards the Spurs 4.5 plus 4.5 in that one. Charlotte at Miami. Miami's won the last 8 out of 10 games against Charlotte. I have to lean towards Miami minus that 7.5. I'd probably take it down to minus 5.5. But I still lean towards Miami minus the 7.5. Dallas at Memphis. Memphis has won 3 games in a row against Dallas. I have to lean towards Dallas plus that 4.5. Chicago at Milwaukee. I have to lean towards Chicago plus 4.5. Utah at Minnesota. Minnesota has won the last 8 out of 10 games against Utah. I don't know in that game. Golden State Warriors at Denver. Denver's won the last 8 out of 10 games against the Golden State Warriors. I have to lean towards the Warriors plus 9.5 in that game. And then Oklahoma City Thunder at Sacramento Kings. Oklahoma City's won 6 games in a row against Sacramento. I have to lean towards Oklahoma City minus 11.5. So which ones would be my favorite plays today? Let me take one more look here. Let me look at something else too. And let's see. Let's see Cleveland, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. Cleveland and Washington, Toronto, Atlanta, Detroit, Brooklyn, Houston, San Antonio, Charlotte, Miami. I like Miami. Like Miami. I just think that line might be a little too high. It was at minus 4.5. Then they ruled LaMelo Ball out, and then it jumped up to 7.5. So, man, I think my favorite 2 plays today are going to be the Golden State Warriors plus 9.5 against Denver. I am a Denver Nuggets fan. Yeah, I like the Warriors plus 9.5, and I like the Warriors plus 9.5 and the Miami Heat minus 7.5. I would feel more comfortable with the Heat at minus 5.5. But just because that line has jumped up since this morning, I'm going to have to say that my favorite play today is going to be the Golden State Warriors plus 9.5 against the Denver Nuggets. Let's see if we have, okay. So, player props. Like I said, I'm not going to be on here for a whole lot talking about player props. I'm very unprepared today. I've been working but we're going to walk through this a little bit here. So defense versus position, NBA. I'm going to go to fantasypros.com to see where teams are weak or strong. And then I kind of want to just browse the depth charts real quick, the projected starting lineups on RotoWire, and just kind of see, who's out and who could benefit. So, yeah, I think Michael Porter Jr. could benefit a lot from Cam Thomas's absence. When we're looking at the Brooklyn Nets player usage rate, let me bring that up real quick as well. Nets player usage rate. Brooklyn Nets player usage rate is what I'll type into statmuse.com. Now, sometimes statmuse.com and NBA.com have slightly different numbers, but I just like the way that StatMuse has it laid out. And, with Cam Thomas being out, Michael Porter Jr. over under 20, or not over under, but the usage rate for him is at 28.4%. So he's the next leader on this Nets team in usage rate. And usage rate basically dictates how important a player is to that team's offensive production. So with Cam Thomas being out, I do expect Michael Porter Jr. for the offense to run through him tonight. And I think some other guys that could benefit, Zaire Williams, Nick Claxton. But yeah, I think this, comes down to Michael Porter Jr. and if the Nets are going to hang in this game or not. And when I'm looking at points per game allowed by Detroit to small forwards, they've allowed the fewest points per game to small forwards this season. I do know Michael Porter Jr. is a good three-point shooter. Detroit is slightly above average at defending against small forwards shooting three-point field goals. So I think he's got a tall task tonight, Michael Porter. Just something else that I was naturally feeling when I'm looking at this Brooklyn Nets lineup. Now, Terrence Mann, he doesn't have a high usage rate, but with Cam Thomas being out, maybe that changes here tonight. I think he's a decent player. And when I'm just looking at this depth chart, that's naturally, instinctively who I think could also benefit from the Cam Thomas absence. And Detroit allows the sixth most points per game to shooting guards. That's the position that Terrence Mann is projected to play tonight. So I think, that's kind of going out on a limb, but instinctively, once again, that's kind of what I'm feeling there. And then let's go through some of these other injuries. With Trae Young being out for Atlanta for a little while, Jalen Johnson is really the guy that I'm looking at to benefit from that. But let's look at these usage rates. Porzingis, with Trae Young being out, Porzingis is actually the next leader in usage rate with 26.7%, and then it's Jalen Johnson, 24.8%, Alexander Walker, 24.3%. So I really think it's going to be, Porzingis, Jalen Johnson, and Alexander Walker that benefit from that. Porzingis typically plays less minutes than Johnson and Alexander Walker. But let me look at something real quick. Porzingis. Yeah. So it looks like he's getting the most minutes that he's had this season is 27 minutes in a game. Looks like he's averaging about 25. So yeah, Jalen Johnson, Nickeil Alexander Walker are all getting more. And where is Toronto most vulnerable against the point guard? Let's go check. Point guards, they're above average at limiting points per game to point guard. So that makes me a little concerned about Nickeil Alexander Walker. And then Jalen Johnson. See how Toronto allows the fifth most points per game to power forwards, which is what Jalen Johnson's projected to be tonight. And then Toronto allows the sixth most points per game to centers, which is what Porzingis is projected to play tonight. I also know that Jalen Johnson's capable of getting some rebounds. Toronto is below average at allowing rebounds to power forwards and to centers. Looks like they're about average, maybe slightly below average. So, and that's just according to the fantasypros.com website, So defense versus position NBA. I mean, there's other sources out here that we could use. I'm looking at like #basketball.com. That data, I'll have to take my time with that and look at that a little bit more in my off time to see the pros and cons with that. But I think, looking at different sources, checking sources is definitely crucial, and not just relying on one source. But anyways, what else are we thinking about on the depth charts here? Well, with LaMelo Ball, Colin Sexton being both doubtful tonight, Brandon Miller being out, I mean, I think it's got to go. The offense for Charlotte has to run through Miles Bridges and Knipple. So let's go look real quick at the Hornets player usage rates. Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, and then Trey Mann. Trey Mann is the projected starting point guard tonight for Charlotte. Miami looks like they're about average at limiting points per game to point guards. And then the next leader in usage rate that plays a healthy amount of minutes is Miles Bridges, who actually, Trey Mann looks like he's averaged about 20.9 minutes per game this season, so about 21 minutes per game. Miles Bridges is averaging 33, so it looks like he's getting a little bit more run. Now with LaMelo being out and Brandon Miller being out, maybe Trey Mann does get some more minutes tonight. And then it's Knipple at 19.1% or 19.5% usage. So, I think those are three guys to look out for. Now, I naturally thought Miles Bridges, for Charlotte's power forward. And normally I would be a little hesitant about playing a power against Miami with Bam Adebayo since he's such a good defender. But he's out tonight, and Miami is below average at points per game allowed to power forwards. And then who's the other guy? Knipple, small forward. Let's go see how Miami is at defending against small forwards. Slightly above average when it comes to points per game allowed. I think Knipple's a pretty good three-point shooter, if I'm not mistaken, and Miami allows the second most to that position. Let me go check real quick to see. I think he's a good kind of a sleeper that people aren't too familiar with yet. And it looks like he takes a fair share of three-pointers. I don't have I'm not going to look it up this second, but I see it as on November 4th against New Orleans, he chucked up 10 threes. So I think that could be a good, maybe a good 3-point shooter. But instead of just going by position, I also like to look at 3-point field goals allowed per game as a team in the NBA. And typically, I have that information readily available. I just don't today. I have to spend some more time working on some football research throughout the afternoon and whatnot. So, but Miami does, as of right now, according to TeamRankings.com, the Miami Heat allow the the eighth most 3-point field goals made per game as a team. So I think that's also, important when we're looking at what position do the Miami Heat allow a lot of 3-pointers to, and do they allow a lot of 3-pointers, as a team. And then what else do we have here? Giddy with Kobe White being out, he's really the guy now. If Dosunmu plays, maybe he cuts into a little bit of Giddy's production. Oh, in that same game, Charlotte, Miami, Bam, Harrow are out. Let's go check who on this Miami Heat team has a decent chance of getting some usage tonight. And then also, if you guys have access to the information where it's like, how does this player do when this player is out? I think that could be beneficial too. Instead of doing it this way that I'm doing it right now, if you can zone in on it and get cold, concrete statistics on how Miles Bridges performs whenever LaMelo Ball is out, how much usage does he have? I think that could be extremely beneficial. I just remember some games last year when LaMelo was out. Miles Bridges, he had a heavy workload, but he's got a little bit more support now with Knipple in there. But Norman Powell leads the Miami Heat team in usage rate. He is projected to be their starting shooting guard tonight. And with Bam being out, I could see that usage going up more. Jaquez and Andrew Wiggins would be the three main guys that I would be kind of looking at there. Now, Jaquez usually comes off the bench. And, and he's typically what? He typically runs small forward, I believe, off the bench. Small forward. So, something that could be beneficial is how many, if you're thinking about playing Jaquez, which I know he is somewhat of a popular player, but like how many bench points does each NBA team allow? I think that could be beneficial information for sure. And it looks like the Charlotte Hornets, it doesn't have a per game basis, but it looks like the Charlotte Hornets have done they're slightly above average at limiting bench points this season. I'm looking at statnews.com. I have up there in the search engine or in the search bar teams that allowed the most bench points this season. But it says, I don't think it understands my question. It says the Washington Wizards have given up the most points by a team off the bench this season. Okay, yeah. So it does understand the question. So the Wizards allow the most bench points. And if you're thinking about a Cleveland Cavalier today, if you think Cleveland's going to blow Washington out today, and you're thinking about taking a Cleveland Cavalier, like a bench player, you have that working with you. And then even if it is a competitive game, bench players come into play, but those bench players could get more minutes if it's a blowout, And then Memphis allows the second most bench points, and they play Dallas today. So if you like a Dallas Maverick coming off the bench, you got that working with you. Phoenix Suns allow the third most bench points, Warriors and Celtics. So, that Celtics and Wizards game may be good to target bench players, especially if you think there's going to be a blowout in that one. But let's look at some other stuff here. Anthony Davis and everybody being out. Let's go look at the Mavericks player usage rate. Dallas Mavericks player usage rates. Anthony Davis and D'Angelo Russell are tied in usage rate. So with Anthony Davis being out, I think it could be more beneficial, for D'Angelo Russell to possibly get some more minutes, not just minutes, but see more usage, try do a little bit more scoring. And the Grizzlies have allowed the fifth most points per game to point guards this season, which is what he's listed as tonight. And I know he's a pretty solid three-point shooter. The Grizzlies have allowed the second most three-point field goals made per game to point guards this season. So, if you're thinking about that, and then I can just look at three-point field goals allowed per game this season and see where Memphis ranks. And they are slightly below average. They rank 20th. So, who else for the Mavericks here? That get a decent amount of minutes. Klay Thompson, PJ Washington, Cooper Flagg are the guys that I would think that could get some more usage tonight with Anthony Davis and Kyrie, Lively all being out. So Anthony Davis is doubtful. I don't want to say that he's out yet. He's not expected to play, okay? And then with Curry being out tonight, Jimmy Butler's questionable. Draymond Green is probable. And we can go look at the Warriors player usage rate real quick. Warriors player usage rate. I would expect Kuminga to get another healthy workload in this one. If Jimmy Butler plays, yes. If he doesn't, Moody, Podziemski. But I want to look at a couple of things here. So I think points in the paint per game are really important. So, those are typically the easiest points. Now, don't get me wrong. There are great three-point shooters that make it look real easy, Steph Curry and those guys. So if a team is weak at defending that three ball, it's – but here's the thing, is if any shooter can have an off night, But I feel like even if you're having an off night and you like to score points in the paint, you can still get a few down. So that's why, I think points in the paint are extremely important when it comes to targeting player props. And, the Mavericks allow the most points in the paint per game this season. So I'm going to be focusing on points in the paint a little bit, unless you guys have any specific questions. So I want to know who the points in the paint leader in the NBA are, specifically for the Memphis Grizzlies. Points in the paint. I think it's probably going to be, JJJ or Morant. I think it's Jaren Jackson, if I'm not mistaken. But let me just take a look here. It's actually John Morant. John Morant ranks 33rd best in the NBA in points in the paint per game. And he ranks first on the Memphis Grizzlies in points in the paint. So I want to see if Dallas allows a lot of points per game to point guards this season. And they're slightly above average at doing that. Also, his primary defender could be D'Angelo Russell. And I used to target players that D'Angelo Russell used to. Hey, one moment, guys. 1 second, please. I just got to take a phone call. All right. Sorry about that. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Hey, what's up, Ivan? What's going on? What a show last night. I know it. Yeah, that was ugly, man. But press the wrong button. Today's a new day. So let's get after it today, Ivan. Hope you're having a good day, though, man. Thanks for joining. Okay, yeah. So, Dallas, they are slightly above average at defending points per game to opposing teams. So I'm not necessarily going to take time to look into John Morant's points and his history and all that stuff. Unless you guys have a specific question, then I will. But unless it seems like something that's absolutely awesome, I'll look into it a little bit more. But otherwise, I'll just leave it to you to do further research, unless you want me to. But I want to look real quick on craftednba.com if D'Angelo Russell's name is on this list. I used to target, I think he's cleaned up his defense a little bit, but I used to target whoever D'Angelo Russell was guarding. It didn't matter if it was, KCP or Pajemski or who it is. Typically I like to target against him, but I think it looks like he's probably cleaned up his defense a little bit. So, anyways, let's continue on here. See if we can find something good. Okay, so we already said Memphis. What about the Magic? They allow the second most points in the paint per game this season. Oh, okay. I was just making sure I was on the right slate here. Okay, so yeah, Orlando allows the second most points in the paint per game, and I think Jaylen Brown ranks first on the Celtics in points in the paint per game. He does. He ranks 30th best in the NBA. Now, Orlando was really good at defending points in the paint per game last season, but I think with Moritz Wagner being out, that could be a reason why they're allowing so many. But yeah, Jaylen Brown ranks 30th, and then he is projected to be the starting small forward tonight for Boston. So I want to see how many points per game Orlando has allowed to small forwards this season. Looks like they're about average. What about three-pointers? I know that's, Jaylen Brown can shoot some threes. Orlando's allowed the third fewest three-point field goals made per game to opposing small forwards. I think it could be beneficial to look into Jaylen Brown props today, but I'm just going to keep rolling with the punches here and keep looking for something else. But if you're interested in Jaylen Brown, I'm not saying that I'm not, and I do think it's worth looking into a little bit more if you have the time. But let's move on to something else here, a different team. Brooklyn Nets allow the third most points per game. Not third most points per game, the third most points in the paint per game this season, according to teamrankings.com. Sometimes it hasn't updated at this time. So, you may look at teamrankings.com here in 30 minutes and be like, what are you talking about? Brooklyn ranks 18th, not 28th in points in the paint allowed per game. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for them to update the website. But so Detroit, who scores points in the paint for Detroit? Cade Cunningham. Duren is actually first on this team. He ranks 11th best in the NBA, and then Cade Cunningham ranks 19th in the NBA in that department. So let's just see if Brooklyn's more vulnerable to allowing points per game to point guards or centers. Brooklyn, they've done pretty well against point guards. They've allowed the 5th most points per game to centers. So, Duren points. I'll look it up real quick since we have a little bit of a match here. Jalen Duren points. Jalen Duren points over under 17.5. Looks like he's averaging 17.9 this season. Jalen Duren statistics. Yeah, 17.9. So he's averaging more points than what his line is listed at in this game. I want to see if he's, scoring more points this season than previous years. When I'm looking at his points per 40 minutes, and yes, it's sky high. He is actually getting more points per 40 minutes. He's been in the league since the 2022-2023 season. He's getting a lot more points per 40 minutes this season than any other season. And then he's getting a few more rebounds. But I think some of that may have had to do with him getting, I think he got like 22 or something the other day. So, during points, I also want to look at usage rate. I want to look at Pistons usage rate and see if he's getting some decent usage here. Yeah, he's right behind Cade Cunningham, 23.5%. So it looks like really it's him, Cunningham, and Thompson, Azur Thompson, getting the bulk of the run here. So now let's go look at Jalen Duren versus Brooklyn Nets history. To see if we can find some advantageous statistics throughout his career against them. He's only gone over that. Let's see. 1, 2, 3 out of 8 career games against Brooklyn. I think that's okay. Or let's see, 2 out of 8 career games. So only 25%. And the reason why I think that that's okay is because he hasn't had as many points per 40 minutes throughout his entire career. So the fact that he has gone over that in 2 out of 8 career games against Brooklyn makes me, somewhat comfortable with it. If he's going over those points in games where he's not getting a good amount of points per 40 minutes, I think he's got a pretty decent chance of doing so tonight, especially with the fact that mentioning the other things that we were talking about, how Brooklyn allows the 5th most points per game to opposing teams, how he's very good at scoring points in the paint, and how Brooklyn as a team allows the 3rd most points in the paint per game. I think it's worth looking into. With that, one concern would be that Detroit runs away with this game. I mean, a blowout's possible in any game, but I think Detroit. The line's minus 10.5. If they're up by 20 late in the 3rd quarter, he might not see the court again. So if you think Detroit's going to run away with it, which I'm unsure about that game. I think with Cam Thomas out for Brooklyn, it could, there's a bigger likelihood of Detroit running with it. But yeah, if you like Jalen Duren tonight, I can see that. Obviously, there's some other stuff you could look into instead of what I just did. And if you need help kind of navigating what type of stuff to look at, I mean, you could look at the specific defender that's supposed to be defending him. Nick Claxton, is he a good defender, a bad defender? Or how has Jalen Duren done again in games against Michael Porter Jr.? Michael Porter Jr. used to play for the Denver Nuggets. So maybe let's do that real quick. Duran versus Michael Porter, head-to-head statistics. It takes me to the landofbasketball.com. And then let's say that he's gone over in every career game that he's played against Michael Porter Jr. There's one more reason you can add to your pros versus the cons about taking Duran. And that's what this is really about. That's what I really like to do is stack all the pros, stack all the cons, and then just weigh it out. And sometimes one factor may mean more in one game than that same factor in another game. So it's all about, deciding also which factor it means the most. But Duran has gone over that in one out of 5 career games against Michael Porter, which is okay, So considering that points per 40 minutes. I think also something that we have to do, instead of just looking at points per 40 minutes, Jalen Duran statistics, is look at his usage. So his usage has never been this high. It was at 14.1, 18.4, 16.7, and now it's at a 24.1. So, I think, and especially with Tobias Harris being out, that could give him some more run, I like Brooklyn Nets team total under 107.5. Under 107.5. Let's check it out. Thank you for the comment. Let's check it out. And if you're not commenting, that's fine too. I appreciate you guys for hanging out with me. So what was the line? 107.5. 107.5. So let's look at a few things here. Brooklyn team total. All right. So we'll look at points per game allowed in the NBA this season by the Detroit Pistons when they are on the road. Detroit has allowed the second fewest points per game on the road this season. Detroit has allowed 110.5 points per game when on road. Brooklyn, points per game, NBA, team points per game when Brooklyn is at home. Brooklyn averages the fourth fewest. Brooklyn averages, Brooklyn has averaged 112.5 points per game when they're at home. So we'll take the average of that, okay, which is going to be a little bit higher than that Brooklyn team total, but I'm not as concerned because Cam Thomas is out. 0.5. I just want to get the exact number here. 111.5. Just based on that. And then something else I want to do is look at Nets versus Pistons history. And I just want to see how many times have the Brooklyn Nets scored 108 points or more against the Detroit Pistons in the last few games. They haven't gone over that in the last 3 games against them. So 0 for 3, 1 out of 4, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 6, 4 out of 7, 5 out of 8, 6 out of 9, 7 out of 10. So it looks like they have gone over in the last 7 out of 10 games. Brooklyn has. But they didn't in their last 3 games. And I think the games that are, the games that are closer, instead of looking back at the 2023-24 season, 2022-2023 season, I think looking at last season's statistics are more accurate. And now I don't want to say that the ones in the previous years don't matter, because I think they do, but I do think the ones that are more current matter more. And they didn't break 100, And I can look at some of these box scores. Let's just go see who Brooklyn had in those games. They didn't have Cam Thomas in their last game that they went under that. I would love it if I found a game where Cam Thomas was in and they went under. But that game he wasn't in and they went under. And then this game they were in and they went under. And this was last season. They had Simmons, Schroeder, Finney-Smith, Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson, who I think is a better starting lineup than what they have now tonight. And Detroit's is almost identical, except, they got Cunningham, Duran. It's not identical because Tobias Harris is out. But they have Isaiah Stewart stepping in. They got Isaiah Stewart stepping in. And Isaiah Stewart, I'm looking at craftednba.com, and I'm looking at their best defenders in the NBA list. And they have their own formula that they work with. But some of the top guys, right? Draymond Green, Wembanyama, Caruso, Gobert, and Chet, Anthony Davis. All right. Not too far below that, you see Isaiah Stewart, ranked 27th. So I think, and then Azur Thompson ranked 14th. And he's Azur Thompson's projected to be the small forward. Isaiah Stewart projected to be the power forward. I already mentioned that I think Michael Porter Jr. is the biggest threat for Brooklyn to stay in this game. And it looks like probably he's going to have to deal with Azur Thompson, who on this crafted NBA list ranks 14th best in the NBA at defense. So, and not just that, but Detroit's done good at preventing teams from scoring on them this season. And what else can we look at? So we can look at just like team defensive efficiency, NBA. And you may be asking, what is team defensive efficiency? And that's fine. I don't know everything either. So we can learn together. But I do know that team defensive efficiency, basically it measures how effectively a team prevents its opponents from scoring, okay? And Detroit this season ranks second best in the NBA at team defensive efficiency. When they are on the road, they rank fourth best in team defensive efficiency. Something else we could do is pace of play in the NBA, which will take us to possessions per game. So is Brooklyn getting a lot of possessions? Is Detroit getting a lot of possessions? Are they playing at a fast pace? Are they playing at a slower pace? Brooklyn has the sixth fewest possessions out of any team in the league. So I like that. And Detroit is slightly below average. So they're not getting a ton of possessions either. So, yeah, Ivan, I could see that, man. I think you're onto something there. Not something that I specialize in or I necessarily play myself, those team totals. But just because I don't do it doesn't mean that I don't like to look into that type of information. When I checked, I believe the Nets haven't scored, says Ivan. Ivan comments, When I checked, I believe the Nets haven't scored more than 98 points in the last 3 or 4 games versus the Pistons, and I believe they had a better team in those meetings before. Yeah, absolutely. And, that's exactly what I was talking about, Ivan. I'm not sure. I'm sure that comment came in before I started speaking. A lot of the time, I don't see what you guys are saying in the comments until I click on the tab. But yeah, I did mention that, so we're on the same wavelength there. I could see a guy like Nick Claxton having a good game, maybe double, maybe. Yeah, Claxton. I mentioned. Let's see. Let me close some of these tabs real quick. Yeah, I think it might have to go through Claxton. If Michael Porter Jr. Is having an off night, or if Azor Thompson's putting the clamps on him, that I was thinking, naturally, Ivan, I was thinking that. I mean, you're not wrong with the Claxton. He is one of the players that I saw that was high in the player usage rate for Brooklyn, especially with Thomas being out. Michael Porter is actually that next guy up. But and Terrence Mann was kind of lower on the list. But naturally, I'm kind of thinking Terrence Mann could do a little something too. But let's go see how many points per game Detroit allows to centers. They're slightly above average at limiting those points per game to centers. So, Detroit's just a good defensive team. Something else that I would like to see, though, with like double doubles is typically when I think of Claxton, I'm thinking points and rebounds, right? So rebounds allowed per game in the NBA, we can go look at real quick. See how many rebounds Detroit is allowing per game to opposing teams. They are below average. They rank 20th in rebounds allowed per game. Now, what about to that center position? Detroit has allowed the 7th most rebounds per game to opposing centers, which is what Claxton is projected to play tonight. And, Claxton versus Pistons statistics is something that we could look up real quick. And, Claxton, he's had a double-double in – he hasn't had one in the last 4 games against Detroit, but then he's got a couple – looks like he's got 3 in his last 10. But I think Claxton could get a little bit more, not just usage tonight. What I would be hoping for with Claxton is that he would maybe get a little bit more minutes with Cam Thomas being out. And I'm interested to see what his double-double line is. I mean, if we're just going based off the last 10 games, right? He's had a double-double in 3 of those games. So how do you know that you're getting a fair price on that, right? I like to go to I'll just type in my search engine here, odds calculator. Go to actionnetwork.com. I'll go down to these fractional odds and type in 10 divided by 3, 10-3. So just based on that alone, if I'm getting plus 333 or even a bigger, plus 400, plus 500, then I think it's, good. But I'll probably need like plus 333 or greater to justify that play based on those statistics alone. Now, I'm not saying that this is just the only time, we should use this calculator for this player. I think the calculator is good for, for everything. But, a 10-game history isn't the full story. But let's just go check what it's at. My guess is that it's going to be like minus 110. I haven't looked at double doubles a whole lot this season, but I know he is good at scoring double doubles. Plus 224. I'm much better at like the points line and everything. So I mean, I would maybe do a little shopping and see if you can get a better price than that. But if you really like it tonight, I could see it happening. I'd be the most concerned about him getting maybe his points. I don't know what he averages, but I do know that Detroit is good at defending against centers scoring points per game. Over in blocks, perhaps. Yeah, so something for that I like to look at. I'll type in my search engine here. Opponent blocks per game. So who's getting blocked a lot? Is Detroit getting blocked a lot? And they rank 17th. So Detroit's not getting blocked a ton. They're not getting blocked very little. It's just about right in the middle. Teams that are getting blocked a lot: the Pelicans, the Wizards, the Blazers, the Magic, and the Sixers. Those are the teams that are getting blocked the most per game this season, according to teamrankings.com. So if you got a player that you like for blocks tonight, I mean, you can even go down to Utah, Chicago, Toronto. Those teams are getting blocked a lot. And when I think of blocks, I think of Wembanyama, right? Houston ranks 19th in opponent blocks per game. So Houston's kind of getting blocked a little bit. So if you like Wembanyama getting blocks tonight, that's a good place to start. What other questions or comments do you guys have on these games for tonight? In case you missed it, I gave away some leans and my favorite plays of the day at the start of the show. Now, tonight's the NBA Cup, the group play. And I struggled in group play last season. There was a time where I just kicked back and for a couple weeks and let them play those group play games. I forgot exactly when the group play came out. It may have been the year before that. I think it was last year, though. And for some reason, it just threw me off. So, personally, I'm going to be real careful with this slate. I mean, I'm careful regardless, but I don't feel just something about this group play just throws me off a little bit. I'm hoping that changes tonight. And I'm not afraid to get on here and give out. I mean, I don't want to, but look, I'm not going to have a perfect show every time I get on the air. I'm just not going to. And I'm actually really happy with how the NBA has gone so far this season. I feel like we've had one bad show, and that was last Friday with the group play. It was Halloween, and other than that, seems like it's pretty solid. So, yeah, not the biggest fan of group play. I don't know what it is, but it just throws me off a little bit. I do my best to give you guys the best picks that I can. But, at the end of the day, my hope is that you guys, just kind of make up your own mind. Just make up your own mind on what you want to do. And, I can give you all the information that I can and do the best I can to help you guys. But, that's just kind of how I look at it. Now, if you want to tail everything that I like, more power to you. Please do so at your own risk. And I like to say nothing is a lock. Nothing's a lock. So I think bankroll management is key for me. And sometimes I hear people that are really mean to guys that are giving out picks and stuff. And if you're maybe selling picks, I mean, okay, and that you're not getting what you want from that, okay, I understand to some degree. But if it's like a guy like me coming on here and just talking about this, for free. I'm not selling anything. I mean, we have the QR code up top, and if you're interested in the parlays that Southgate does, which I'm not a fan of parlays, and I haven't tried his services only because I don't like parlays. But if you're into parlays, that option is available. I hear he's pretty good. He covers all different types of sports. $9.99 per day, $49.99 per week. There's also the Walmart.com and all that stuff up there. BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Open Goal. But personally, I'm not. This is an open room that you guys can join, and just please do so at your own risk. And if you're fading everything that I'm talking about, more power to you. I'm hoping that the group play tonight doesn't throw me off, but I feel like just with last year and this past Friday of how I've done in the NBA group play, fading me may not be a bad option today. Have you spoken about the Atlanta Hawks game yet? I have them in the money line parlay with the Nets under the team total. Yeah, we can talk about that. So I'm not as prepared as I normally am, Ivan, for shows today, but I'm leaning towards Toronto in that game. Toronto has won 3 games in a row against Atlanta. And we can talk about, let's see. I don't think this Toronto Raptors team is bad, man. Quickly, Barrett. I know that you're familiar with those two, Ivan. Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, and Pirtle. I think they're going under the radar a little bit. And Atlanta's without Trae Young. Let's go look at maybe Scotty Barnes versus Porzingis. Scotty Barnes versus Porzingis. Head-to-head statistics here. Versus Barnes. I just want to see if there's sometimes what I like to do is see head-to-head player matchups and see if somebody has a career record of 10-0 against somebody, which I think last year it happened with I think it was Jason Tatum. Let me try to type this in. Tatum versus Dylan Brooks. Head-to-head statistics. Yeah, see, Tatum. Anytime Tatum plays Brooks, where Brooks is in a game that Tatum's in, Tatum has an 11-1 career record against them. I remember last season, man, I was about to go with whatever team Dylan Brooks was on, and then I just happened to randomly search Jason Tatum versus Dylan Brooks, and Tatum was 10-0 against him at the time. Made me actually switch over to Boston, and Boston won that game. So, but let's talk about, the Hawks game a little bit more here. I was trying to do some search queries with that. Maybe Jalen Johnson versus Scotty Barnes or something. I mean, there's a lot of different search queries that we could do about that. And I don't necessarily like to talk about game information a whole lot as much as I do player props when I'm on these shows. I kind of do I used to talk about, and I still do from time to time. I'm just not as prepared today, to be honest with you, Ivan. I was working earlier. I just really wanted to come on here and go over a few props with you guys, talk about the injuries, a few trends that I saw. But usually I go over who has the points per game advantage, and how I decide that is Toronto points per game, Atlanta points allowed per game, vice versa, and see who has that points per game advantage, points in the paint advantage, fast break, 3-pointers, basically every statistical category that each team gets and allows, and then just balance that out. So I think a major statistic, right, is points in the paint per game. We can go over a few things here for that game. Points in the paint per game. I'm not going to filter this by road and away splits. I mean, you can, but I think we don't have a big enough sample size this early in the season yet to do that quite yet. But and I know I did that with the team total with Brooklyn, but Toronto points in the paint allowed per game. Toronto ranks 21st. Atlanta ranks 19th. Now, what about points in the paint scored per game? Points in the paint, team statistics, offense. And here's another thing, guys, is and while I'm looking this up, let's say that I was just undefeated. I got on the live stream every day, and just everything that I talked about was gold, and every pick that I made went one. If that were the case, man, anytime I would talk, the books and said anything, the books would change the line so quick on us, and you would get an unfair price, you know. And kind of the same thing if everything I talked about was wrong. You guys could just fade me every time and guarantee win. And once again, I'm not big into the parlays. I'm very, very selective in what I like to play. So, because I know how good these books really are. I respect the sports books and their intelligence. They have a lot of sophisticated software and stuff they do to predict the, to set lines and all types of tricks and stuff. So, ranks 5th. So points in the paint advantage, I do give Atlanta a slight advantage, but something that we got to take into consideration is that Trae Young is out. I don't think Trae Young is a great points in the paint scorer, but I'm pretty sure he's a good 3-point shooter, right? So 3-point field goals allowed per game. I just want to see, how detrimental that could be to Atlanta today. Atlanta ranks 9th best in 3-point field goals allowed per game. Also, man, there's things that I just don't talk about on the live streams, and some of that has to do with me handicapping these games. And ranks 9th. Atlanta 3-point field goals allowed per game ranks 9th. And I can't give out, all of my sauce here. I can't necessarily play against the sports books with all my cards showing. You know what I mean? But for the most part, I really don't care. 3-point field about what I talk about. Three-point field goals. 3-point field goals made per game. See, both these teams are pretty good at the 3-pointers and stuff. 3-point field goals made per game. Allowed per game. Both of them are good at defending against that. So, that's basically just what I do, man, and just kind of weigh the pros and cons of that. And obviously, there's just other factors. I also have Emmanuel quickly over 5.5 assists. Yeah, we can just look into that specific prop there. Emmanuel quickly. And he is the point guard for Toronto. Atlanta does very good at limiting point guard assists. They've allowed the 8th fewest assists allowed per game NBA. Atlanta they rank 19th in assists allowed per game. Atlanta does, but they do a good job at defending against that point guard. 5.5 assists. Quickly, statistics. Let's go see if he's giving out some assists this season. Is he focused on that a little bit more than usual? Yes, his assists per 40 are at an all-time high per 40 minutes. So I like that. And we can do quickly versus, man, I have too many tabs open. Let me start closing some stuff real quick. Quickly versus, let's do 2 search queries here. Quickly versus the Hawks. How many times has he had 6 or more assists against the Hawks in his last few games? 2 out of 4, 2 out of 5, 2 out of 6, 2 out of 7, 2 out of 8, 2 out of 9. Only 2 out of 10. But once again, I'm not as concerned with the data that is older. I'm more, it's okay that it's at 2 out of the last 5 games. He's gone over that. What about Emmanuel quickly versus? I mean, it would be great, right? If we could get like the last 7 out of 10, he's gone over that line. Then it's like, oh yeah. But I also want to see if we can filter this to quickly versus Alexander Walker. Since Alexander Walker used to play with the Pelicans. Alexander Walker. I don't want comparisons. I want head-to-head statistics quickly. Or what about Alexander Walker? It's tough for me to do a search query on the spot like this without games played between Alexander Walker. That's what I want. Games played between Alexander Walker and other NBA players. And that might take me to the land of basketball. I don't want let me see if I can. I don't want to take up too much time trying to teams head to head. Alexander Walker versus how do I search for this player versus this player? Alexander Walker versus quickly. Let me see if I can just type it up here. And that's why I'll try to just see if I can filter it to quickly, because it's just giving me a comparison between these two. I want the head-to-head statistics between these two. I'm not quite sure how to filter that yet, but let's do quickly versus Porzingis head-to-head statistics, which isn't the exact, Oh, here we go. Quickly and Alexander Walker. Perfect. Found it. All right. Alexander Walker has a 5-2 career record against Quickly. How many times has Quickly had 6 or more assists against Alexander Walker? 1 out of the last 3 games, 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6, 1 out of 7. So only 1 out of 7. And then something else that you could do, it's a little bit more advanced, but you could do, I think it's called assist to usage ratio. Emmanuel quickly. Assist to usage ratio. And it's the highest it's been in his career. His assist ratio. I'm not sure if that's the same as assist to usage ratios. Like I said, that's a little bit more advanced. But if you're into that type of stuff, I think it could definitely be very beneficial. and it's calculated by dividing the assist percentage by the usage rate. And then that ratio helps to adjust for the fact that players with higher usage rates will naturally have higher number of assists as they are more involved in plays. So just because you see a usage rate that somebody has a high usage rate doesn't necessarily mean they're going after rebounds and assists. But that assist to usage ratio and the rebounds to usage ratios can help with that. But I'm concerned about the history there, Ivan. But I like it. I naturally think that Toronto's a pretty solid team, and he does have guys that he can throw the ball to, and score buckets. And I think part of this comes down to not just how many assists allowed per game. I don't know if we looked this up. Assists allowed per game by Toronto, or excuse me, by Atlanta, they ranked 19th. So we did look that up. Now that I remember, but something else that we could look up is what was it? Assists. I was just thinking about it. Team defensive efficiency. We can go back to that. How likely is it, and points in the paint per game? Because I talk about how important that is, right? So I kind of want to, if I'm taking a player over an assist, I kind of want to look at points in the paint and see if he does have a guy that he likes to throw the ball to that has a high likelihood, a high probability of scoring points in the paint. Is that player that he likes to throw the ball to good at scoring points in the paint? Is this team weak against points in the paint? And Atlanta is. They're below average in allowing points in the paint per game. The question is, does Toronto have guys that can score points in the paint? Yeah. RJ Barrett ranks 26th best in the NBA at points in the paint per game. Scotty Barnes ranks 39th best in points in the paint per game. So he has two guys right there that he can dish the ball to. They can get those points in the paint. But team defensive efficiency as well. How good is Atlanta at defense? They rank 15th right now. So I don't like the historical data on Quickly getting those assists, but I like what I'm seeing here current. Appreciate the comments there, Ivan. Let me close some of these tabs. If you guys have any other player prop questions, feel free to ask. If you guys are looking for 3-point field goals tonight, something else I like to do, and I usually have this done before the show, I like to look at the NBA milestone tracker. It doesn't look like it's been too beneficial for us this season, but there are times where, a player needs X amount of points to reach some sort of a milestone. And I just think that if you like a player, let's say you like somebody to score 30 points tonight, and they need 30 more points to reach a milestone, I think that's just another added pro. It's all about weighing the pros and cons. I think that's just another added pro, another benefit. Whenever you like something and a player needs a milestone, can reach a milestone if they hit that. Off the top of my head, I already know that Kevin Durant and Buddy Hield both need 4 3-point field goals tonight to move up in the all-time 3-point field goals leaders list. Both of them are in the top 25 right now. Kevin Durant would pass Kyle Lowry if he had 4 3-pointers tonight, and Buddy Hield would pass Paul Pierce if he got 4 3-pointers tonight. Buddy Hield was with Golden State, so how good or bad is Denver at defending against against three-pointers this season. They rank 12th best. So, excuse me, 8th best. So they're slightly above average at defending against that three-point ball this season. And Buddy Hield, he usually rocks with the shooting guard or small forward. Denver does look like they're a little vulnerable to shooting guard. So if he's coming off the bench, and it goes back to how many bench points does Denver allow? And we looked that up earlier. Bench points allowed in the NBA. Teams that allow the most bench points. The Nuggets are not. The Nuggets are above average this season at limiting bench points, unless Hield starts, which I don't think he's projected to. No, I'm not seeing him in the projected starting lineup. But and then what about? So right now I'm a little skeptical about Hield getting there. But what about? And that's just based off that information alone. You could maybe Hield has had 4 3-pointers, at least 4 3-pointers in every career game against Denver. I'm just not going to look that up right now. But who does Houston play? San Antonio? San Antonio is about average at limiting 3-point field goals per game this season. And Kevin Durant is supposed to play the small forward position today. How does San Antonio defend against that? They rank 11th best. So, I don't think Kevin Durant's necessarily got his hands. I kind of like Kevin. I think Kevin Durant probably has a better chance tonight, and the odds will probably reflect that too. And Kevin Durant's probably going to see more playing time than Buddy Hield. So it really comes to no surprise that I would lean towards more Kevin Durant getting that than Buddy Hield. But I do know that San Antonio just overall has a good defense. But I'm specifically looking at the 3-point defense. Something else, worth considering if you have the time is, does Kevin Durant get blocked a lot? Because, we mentioned that Houston is below average at getting blocks, at allowing teams to block them. And if he's one of those guys that, gets blocked often, then I'm worried that Wembanyama is going to, disrupt him a little bit. So I would maybe look at Kevin Durant. And I'll look it up real quick. Durant versus Wemby, head-to-head statistics. How many 3-pointers? Has Kevin Durant ever had 4+ 3-pointers in a game against Wembanyama? No. He had 3. He's played 4 career games against him. So he's never got that 4. But that's a small sample size. The more games that we have, the better I feel about certain stuff. I mean, there's been player props last season where, a player was a perfect, in his last 19 out of 20 games, he has gone over this line. And then in his last 17 against this player or against this team, he's gone over that line. So I think that's when it's like, okay, this is a great player prop. And it takes a lot of time to find that. It takes a lot of time to find good spots like that. Bettors, you don't mess with college basketball or football. No, there's just too many teams, too many factors. I do like to watch college sports from time to time when I have time, but no, I know KU and North Carolina play tonight. That should be a good one. And then I like the NCAA basketball tournament, but no, I don't handicap college sports. Too many factors. Şengün is playing really good, and I just enjoy professional sports more. Yeah, Şengün's playing really good. Going up against Wemby. Şengün versus Wemby. Head-to-head statistics. I'll just randomly type this in here. Şengün has a 4-2 career record against him. I want to see how many times Victor Wembanyama has had a double-double. I'm sure that's like minus a lot, but he has had a double-double in 4 out of 6 career games against Shingun. Shingun has had a double-double in 3 out of 6. Shingun had a game where he dropped 45 in a game against Wemby. Philadelphia, Milwaukee, they play tonight. They allow the most points per game to small forwards. Okoro is the projected small forward for Chicago. I'm just kind of trying to see if there's any big weaknesses anywhere with some of these big-time players that you guys like. Dallas Mavericks, Wizards, and Charlotte. Dallas Mavericks play who tonight? But yeah, you guys have any other questions or anything? If not, I'm gonna get out of here. Only really because I'm not as prepared to do player props today. Like I said, I was working earlier, and usually I have fast break points leaders, 3-point leaders, points in the paint leaders, what each team allows, although that's been a little difficult lately because I don't know if teamrankings.com has updated their website or not before I start the live stream. So I've just been doing that on the fly, but turnovers per game, turnovers forced per game, that's big, right? Especially if a team's allows a lot of fast break points. So which teams are just turning the ball over a lot this season? Turnovers per game, right? That tells you how many times your team's turning it over, but turnovers allowed per game. How many times are teams getting turnovers on you? And Portland, I don't think they play tonight. Cleveland's allowing opponents to get forced turnovers off them a lot this season. Oklahoma City, Phoenix. I feel like some of that has to do with the pace of play, though. Some teams are just faster. They have more possessions, and it makes sense that they would. But what I'd be concerned about is a team that has like a low plays per game, is a slower paced team that turns the ball over a lot against a team that is good at forcing turnovers, But yeah, I gave my leans and stuff earlier. I usually go over a lot more player props, but I'm just, once again, unprepared today. Unless you guys have questions, be more than happy to. Yeah, here we go. What about Hartenstein for rebounds, Bettors? Let's look at that. New York Knicks. Not New York Knicks. See, now I'm getting fatigued. Now I'm getting fatigued when I'm starting to think Hartenstein still plays for the Knicks. Oklahoma City Thunder. So you said rebounds, right? Yeah. Thanks, Ivan. Hartenstein for rebounds. Let's go check before we even check what his line is. How about this? We just think of a line. Is Chet in tonight? I kind of already know because I've looked into this prop a little bit already this season. My guess is it's going to be at 10.5. Hartenstein over under 10.5 is the line that I'll set for myself before I even look at the book. And now we'll look at the book after. All right. Opponent rebounds, or just rebounds allowed per game in the NBA. And they're playing against Sacramento. Sacramento ranks 14th, so they're average at rebounds allowed per game this season. Sac is average at rebounds allowed per game this season. And Sacramento has allowed the fourth most rebounds per game to centers this season, according to fantasypros.com. Sac has allowed the fourth most rebounds per game to centers, which is what Hartenstein is projected to play tonight. And then we can go look at Hartenstein statistics. Let's see if he's rebounding at a higher rate this season, if it's steady or what's going on. It's dropped a little bit, and I think some of that just may be with due to Chet being there, another guy that can get after those rebounds. Maybe a little bit has to do with matchups. Hartenstein versus Kings statistics is something that we can look up. How many times against the Kings has he gone over the 10.5 line? 1, 2 out of the last 4, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 6, 3 out of 7, 3 out of 8, 3 out of 9, only 3 out of the last 10 games. But at this point, before we start doing more research, let's really go check out what his line is at. Nine and a half. Over under 9.5. So how many times has he gone over the 9.5? Last 4 games against Sacramento, he's gone over that. 4 out of 5, 5 out of 6, 5 out of 7, 5 out of 8, 5 out of 10. If you can toggle that down to 8.5, if you're comfortable with that. I know I don't like parlays, but if you do, if you toggle that down to over 8.5, he's gone over that in the last 5, 6, 7 out of 10 games. So 70% instead of the 50%. But we're talking about just 9.5 regardless, right? I think another benefit here, Ivan, is if Sabonis doesn't play. He is questionable. We know Sabonis can go after those rebounds. If he is out, I think that gives Hartenstein a better chance of getting those rebounds. Right now, Sabonis is listed as questionable. Oklahoma City's favored by 11.5 points. I got to feel like that line is set for Sabonis to miss this game. And didn't Sacramento, did they miss that? He missed his last game, right? That Westbrook had that triple-double. He missed that game against Golden State. So that was November 5th. He had a day off on the 6th. Today's the 7th. I think it kind of depends on if Sabonis plays or not. You know, but I want to look at this box score from this game last season to see if Sabonis played, and he did. And I also want to see if Chet played in this one. Chet didn't play in this game that he went over. And he had 14 rebounds in that one. He had 10 in this other game, which I'm thinking Chet probably played. Yes. That's exactly what happened. So when Chet's out, rebounds up. When Chet's in, rebounds are not necessarily down. They're just lower. They're not as high. In this game, Chet missed, and he had another 15 rebounds. And then something else that we got to look at is like how many times has Hartenstein gone over that line in his last, in all of his games this season? How many times has he got the 10-plus boards? He's got there in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games this season out of 3, 6, 9, 66.66%. So that's solid. I know a lot of you like to look at those. There's tools out there. I think Ivan, you were talking about one yesterday. I didn't get a chance to look at it, but it'll like basically tell you how a player has done in his last 10 games or against a specific team or something like that. The trends and stuff. I think that's another tool that you can use to help weigh these pros and cons on on if it's worth it or not. I think it's going to be close. You know, personally, whenever I'm playing a player prop, I'm not trying to play something that I think is going to be close. But you may have your reasons why you love it, and you don't think maybe it is going to be close, but you're still comfortable with it. I think that's the thing with me is like I got to get to a state of mind where I'm comfortable with it, and I just don't feel comfortable enough to make the play. But from what I see here, man, I think I think he. I wonder if there's a game that I can find that Sabonis missed, but Chet played. You know, Sabonis played in this one. That's what I would kind of do. See if there's any games that Chet played and Sabonis missed. And I'm a little concerned, I'm a little bit more on the concerned side because looking at Hartenstein's statistics, especially if Sabonis plays. But I'm looking at his rebounds per 40 minutes 2024, 2025. So that was last season. And each time he went over that. His rebounds per 40 minutes is the second highest has been in his career. I'm actually leaning towards him getting that. I misspoke. I thought his rebounds per 40 minutes were kind of like declining, and they are from last season, but not by much. And they're still at the second highest in his career. So, yeah, I'd have to lean towards him getting that tonight, Ivan. And I like it even more if Sabonis doesn't play, which that line could go up. That line could go up if Sabonis plays. Will it go? What do you think? Do you think the line goes down if they rule Sabonis in, or do you think it goes up if they rule him out? I think that if Sabonis plays, it stays the same, and if Sabonis is ruled out, it goes up. Although I do think that the line is set for Sabonis not to play the spread. Any key players out today in the NBA? No, it's okay. Yeah, some key players. Let's go ahead and refresh this page real quick and see if we have any key players that are out tonight or questionable. I did mention that at the start of the show, but I know you joined a little bit late. Trae Young, he's been out and looks like he'll be out for a little while. Point guard for the Atlanta Hawks is out. Tobias Harris, forward for the Detroit Pistons, is out today. Cam Thomas, that's a big absence today. He is out for the Brooklyn Nets. He is a guard. Cam Thomas out for the Nets. LaMelo Ball is doubtful to play tonight for Charlotte. It's rare that I see that a player is doubtful and they end up playing. It's more rare than me seeing a player that's probable and doesn't play. And that's pretty rare. When I see a player is probable and they don't play, that's pretty rare. But when I see a player doubtful and they end up playing, that's even more rare. LaMelo Ball, doubtful. Colin Sexton, doubtful. Brandon Miller, doubtful. 3 players for Charlotte. 3 big-time players for Charlotte. Basically, they're big 3. Miles Bridges, you could throw him in there and say he's part of the big 3 or big 4. But Bam Adebayo, out tonight for Miami. Center for Miami. I'm now seeing that Larson is questionable for Miami. I'm not sure, but I talked about Jaquez earlier, and I'm thinking that maybe Jaquez would get the start. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look and see if Jaquez made a start earlier this year, but I think Jaquez may have to fill in that starting position tonight if Larson is ruled out. But he's not a big time player. The big time players in that one, yeah, Bam Adebayo out, Tyler Harrow, he's been out, and Jimmy Butler is questionable. Al Horford's questionable, but it seems like he's likely to play. Jimmy Butler questionable to play though. Anthony Davis is out again for the Dallas he's doubtful. Anthony Davis is doubtful tonight. And I'm looking at rotowire.com, guys, ROTO wire.com. Sabonis, I've already talked about him, questionable tonight for Sacramento. And then Jalen Williams, Jalen. There's two Jalen Williams in Oklahoma City. Jalen, Jalen, is out again. So I think that's those are the big time injuries. Obviously, we can have some late scratches and stuff, but I think the real notable ones to keep up to date with right now is going to be Sabonis, Jimmy Butler, Anthony Davis, who's doubtful. LaMelo Ball, Colin Sexton. They are doubtful. Caris LeVert's questionable. I think he's he's like hit or miss kind of. And that could give Detroit some extra pop if he is available. I found a gem. Terrence Mann over 3.5 assists. Yeah, I like Terrence Mann. He used to play with the Clippers, and let's go check out Terrence Mann. Now he's playing with Brooklyn. In Detroit, what did we say about Detroit? About their assists allowed per game? I think we already looked this up, but I'll just type it in again. Assists allowed per game. And let me close some of these tabs. I'm starting to get tab crazy here. Whenever we start talking about all these props and stuff, I still have tabs open from Tobias Harris here. So, assists allowed by Detroit. Terrence Mann's projected to be the shooting guard for Brooklyn tonight. So I want to see how many assists per game Detroit allows as a team. They allow the fewest. And I want to see how many assists allowed per game do they allow to the shooting guard position. They allow the fifth fewest. So naturally, you might be like, oh, they allow they're good at preventing assists. They're good at preventing assists against that specific position. But if you're getting a good line, it may be worth it, So, Terrence Mann, let's look up a couple things here. Let's go look at, is he focused on assisting more this season than previous seasons? Yes. His assist per 40 is the second. His assist per 40 minutes rate is the second highest that it's been in his career, which is good. But I do have a concern about that with this tonight specifically, is because Cam Thomas is out. And I think, Detroit is, we already looked up how Michael Porter Jr. is probably going to be that guy tonight for Brooklyn, getting the most usage. But Detroit has done a great job at limiting points per game to the small forward position. So I think Brooklyn might have to divert to using Claxton, like you mentioned, Ivan, or even Terrence Mann. I think Terrence Mann, I mean, that's a little bit more of a kind of a longer shot to get usage, but I think it's not a bad option for Brooklyn tonight, which makes me concerned that Terrence Mann is going to be in a more of a scorer's mentality than a facilitator. But let's go look at Terrence Mann versus Pistons statistics. How many times in his last few games has he gone over that? He's never gone over that in his career against the Pistons. What about this season? How many Terrence Mann? I'm just interested on why you like it at this point. My guess is that he has good history this season with the assists, and that's what it's looking like to me. So he's gone over those assists, right? And 1, 2, 3, 4. You said 3.5. So his last 4 games, he's gone over that. How many? So Indiana, Minnesota. Is this Cam Thomas's first game out this season? Is my next question. He played a little bit in the Indiana game. So, I mean, truly, this is his first game not playing. And that's what makes me a little concerned about it. You know, I think Terrence Mann's going to just have a little bit more of a scorer's mentality tonight. I found another yesterday, Prop Madness. Okay, cool. Thank you, Ivan. I'll look that up too. I still haven't yet got to your other one, which was, I have it in my notes here. Props.ai, was it? Prop Madness. I have it in my notes somewhere here, and I'll look for it here in a bit. After the show here. Another Jim, JJJ, over 19.5 points versus Dallas. Jaren Jackson Jr. versus Dallas. So there's a few things that we can look at with that. Jaren Jackson Jr. 19.5 points. Jaren Jackson versus Mavericks. Statistics. How many times has he had 20 or more points against the Mavericks in his last handful of games against them? 2 out of 3, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 6, 4 out of 7, 4 out of 8, 4 out of 10. Okay. Only one of those games he only played 14 minutes. So really, you know, maybe 4 out of a 9. Also, it really seems like his minutes are correlating a lot with the points. How many minutes per game is he averaging this season? Jaren Jackson. Minutes per game, 28.8 minutes per game. So how many times did he have 28 or more minutes and went over, right? That's something that we gotta know too. 1 out of 2, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4, 3 out of 5, 3 out of 6, 3 out of his last 6, 4 out of 7, 4 out of 8, 4 out of his last 8 games. Okay. And then Jaren Jackson Jr. is projected to be what tonight? Center? Or is power forward? Power forward. How many points per game does Dallas allow to power forwards? They allow the 8th most points per game to power forwards. Then what is Jaren Jackson good at? For some reason, I think he's like a solid. Is he a pretty good 3-point shooter? No, I thought he was a good points in the paint per game guy, and I didn't see him in the top 50 in the NBA this season. Um, Points in the paint per game. Memphis, John Morant leads that team in points in the paint. I don't think he's that far behind though. There he is, 61st. So he's good at points in the paint. And I think I mentioned that Dallas is the worst team at allowing points in the paint per game this season. They are, according to teamrankings.com. Dallas allows the most points in the paint per game. He's a good points in the paint per game guy. And Dallas has, allowed a good amount of points to that position. Dallas versus Memphis. Jaren Jackson. He does shoot 3-pointers. So that's another thing is I want to know how Dallas defends against that power forward position in regards to 3-point field goals allowed per game. They actually allow the most 3-point field goals per game to the power forward position. And something else we could do is look at Jaren Jackson versus D'Angelo Russell. Let's see if we can find a search query with that. Jaren Jackson versus D'Angelo Russell. Yeah, I know that D'Angelo Russell might not be on him or whatever, but I think it's just worth browsing into. See if Jaren Jackson goes over this total in every game that he ever played against D'Angelo Russell. But he's gone over his last 3 games that D'Angelo Russell's been in. That was back when Russell was with the Lakers. But Jaren Jackson had, 20 points more in 3 of those games. And then did we look to see if Jaren Jackson was scoring more this season, if his points per 40 minutes was trending up or down or what that deal is? It's trending down. And it's trending down a lot. And I think some of that might have to do with why is it so low? What's up with hold on, let me look at something real quick. Why is it so low? I don't understand. What about Jaren Jackson versus? What about team defensive efficiency in the NBA? Mavericks ranked 5th best, which is concerning. They're a good defensive team. What about Jaren Jackson versus Gafford? Can we find a head-to-head statistic there? How many times against Gafford has Jaren Jackson Jr. gone over that? His last 2 games. I mean, I can see it happening. I just, I don't like that his points per 40 minutes is trending down. But I do like the fact that he's good at scoring points in the paint. I think that's an advantage for him and John Morant tonight. They're both good at scoring points in the paint, and Dallas allows the most points in the paint per game. And then, to that specific position, Dallas has done a much better job at defending against point guards, points per game this season than centers. They've allowed. Jaren Jackson is going to be running that power forward still. Dallas has allowed the 8th most points per game to power forwards, and to point guards, they're pretty good at limiting points per game to point guards. And when we're looking at usage rate, Grizzlies' usage rate, my guess is that Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson are going to be at the top of this list. Yeah, it's Morant, and then Jaren Jackson, and then Aldama. There's a pretty big separation between Morant and Jaren Jackson. But nonetheless, Jaren Jackson is the second leader of usage rate on this team. But that 22% usage rate is concerning. You said it was at 19.5. I just kind of want to look to see if there's another player at 19.5. I'm just going to look for a random player real quick whose over-under points is at 19.5. Brandon Ingram. Raptors player usage rate is what I'll type in here. Look at the Toronto Raptors player usage rate. Now, Brandon Ingram is at the same over-under, 19.5 points. But he leads his team in usage rate, and his usage rate is higher. Now, is Ingram in the same type of position tonight as Jaren Jackson? Going up against Atlanta. Atlanta points per game allowed to small forwards. They allow the 4th most. So pretty similar. If anything, I mean, just based on that, Ingram's in a better position. What about Ingram's strengths? You know, Atlanta is vulnerable to points in the paint per game. Is Ingram good at scoring points in the paint? It's really Barrett and Barnes for Toronto with the points in the paint. Pirtle, Ingram, he ranks 53rd. He's not, he's good at it. Now, Toronto does share the ball, but so does Memphis. I mean, I think I like Ingram to go over the 19.5 more than Jaren Jackson, just based on these statistics, you know. Also, is Brandon Ingram's points per 40 minutes trending higher? I know Jaren Jackson's was trending lower. Brandon Ingram's steady. A little lower compared to years where he was maybe in LA or something, but and then Ingram, Brandon Ingram versus who does Toronto play tonight? Brandon Ingram versus the Hawks. Statistics. How many times has Ingram had 20 plus points against the Hawks? Now, we mentioned that Jaren Jackson's got there in last 4 out of 10. Ingram's got there in his last 4 out of 10 as well. So, and who's playing more minutes per game? Ingram, 32.6 minutes per game compared to Jaren Jackson, who's playing 28.8. So, I like Ingram. I mean, yeah, I can see Jaren Jackson going over that too, but Outlier Pro was the one from yesterday. That's right. Outlier Pro. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out, man. It is expensive for Pro, $500 a year. Okay. Cool. Thanks for that information. Any other questions or anything today, guys? That's about it. I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. Before I do in the live stream, I'll give some player injury updates. I like to do that before I end the stream. I'm going to refresh rotowire.com, ROTO wire.com, to see if there are any other injuries that I haven't already stated. DeAndre Hunter is probable for the Cleveland Cavaliers to start in that small forward position tonight. Koulibaly is out for Washington. Trae Young remains out for Atlanta. Tobias Harris remains out for Detroit. Caris LeVert still questionable for Detroit. Cam Thomas out for Brooklyn tonight. LaMelo Ball doubtful to play. Colin Sexton doubtful to play. They both play for Charlotte. Bam Adebayo out tonight for Miami. Also, Brandon Miller's out for Charlotte. I think he'll be out for a little bit, is what they were saying. Jimmy Butler's questionable to play. He's with the Warriors. Anthony Davis is doubtful. And Sabonis is out. And I just want to see real quick if that line went up on Hartenstein's rebounds. It was at 9.5. I projected that Sabonis wouldn't play in this game about 20 minutes ago, and that line would go up from 10.5, or it was at 9.5, right? And still at 9.5. Maybe it does go up. I don't know. But I do think that Hartenstein has a better chance of getting those rebounds that we were talking about. I think it was at 9.5 is what we were looking at, Ivan. But with Sabonis being out, I do think he's got a better chance of getting it. Hey, thank you, Ivan. Thank you for joining. Thank all of you for joining today. Really appreciate you guys. If you could hit that like, follow, subscribe button, we'd appreciate that too. But if you're just hanging out and tuning in, we appreciate that too. I appreciate you. I'd like to thank the sponsors: BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Walmart.com, Open Goal, MLB, and NFL Pro Shops. If you guys scan that QR code there at the top, it should take you to that link where all those sweet perks and deals are offered for you guys. And then the Southgate parlays. I don't like parlays, but Southgate's parlays, if you scan that QR code, it should take you to that information to where you can get access to his plays, $9.99 per day, $49.99 a week. Just because I don't like parlays doesn't mean that you guys can't take advantage of those parlays. I hear he's pretty good. I've personally never tried the Southgate's parlays, but if you're interested in that option is available. And I think that about does it. Once again, thank you guys, and I will see you guys. The plan is definitely Sunday morning do an NFL show, and then NBA. So let's see what's going on tomorrow. I'll see if I can do an NBA show tomorrow too. It looks like we have 8 games on tomorrow, but yeah. So I'll see you guys tomorrow or Sunday morning, barring any setbacks. Okay. Thank you once again, and hope you guys have a great day. Good luck.
This non-casual podcast may not be reproduced, retransmitted, or reused without the authorized written consent of the Not Move Podcast Network. Thank you, and we hope you enjoyed today's broadcast.